Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Business English with me. I'm Anna, and I'm really happy you're here with us today.
And I'm Ryan. It's great to have you with us. If you are listening before work, during your commute, or while taking a short break, we hope this conversation helps you learn useful English in a natural way.
Today, we're going to talk about a very practical topic, phrasal verbs for work. These are expressions you will hear in meetings, emails, conversations with colleagues, and everyday office situations.
Exactly. Phrasal verbs can sometimes feel difficult because a small word like up, out, off, or in can completely change the meaning of a verb.
For example, you probably know the verb take, but when we say take on, take over, or take up, the meaning changes.
And that is why learning phrasal verbs as complete expressions is so useful. Instead of learning only individual words, you learn the whole phrase and understand how people actually use it.
Our examples today will focus on workplace situations. We'll talk about projects, meetings, deadlines, responsibilities, communication, and problems that can happen during a normal working day.
And don't worry if you don't know all of these expressions. Just listen to the examples and notice how each phrasal verb works in context. You can also repeat some of the sentences quietly or out loud. Repetition is a great way to make useful expressions easier to remember.
So, Anna, why don't we start with one of the most useful phrasal verbs at work? Good idea. Let's start with take on. To take on a task, responsibility, or project means to accept it and agree to do it.
So if your manager says, "Can you take on this project?" they're asking whether you are willing to accept responsibility for the project.
Exactly. You could answer, sure, I can take it on, or I'd be happy to take on the project.
I hear this expression quite often. For example, last month, my team had a new client, and I took on the responsibility of preparing the weekly reports.
That is a very natural example. We can also use it when someone has too much work. You might say, I'd like to help, but I can't take on another task right now.
That sentence is useful because sometimes saying no at work is necessary. You want to be helpful, but you also need to be realistic about your workload.
Right. And workload means the amount of work that you have to do. If your workload is heavy, you have a lot of tasks and responsibilities.
Another useful phrasal verb is take over. It means to begin controlling or being responsible for something that another person was doing.
For example, if a colleague leaves a company, another employee may take over their responsibilities.
You can also say, "Ryan will take over the meeting because Anna is unavailable."
Yes, and take over can also describe a change in control. For example, one company can take over another company.
That sounds more serious than taking over a meeting.
Definitely. If someone takes over a meeting, you only need to worry about the agenda. If a company takes over another company, there are probably many more things happening behind the scenes.
Speaking of meetings, let's look at another common phrasal verb, bring up.
Bring up means to mention a topic or introduce an issue into a conversation. In a meeting, you might say, I'd like to bring up an important issue.
Or, "Can I bring up something before we finish the meeting?"
Exactly. It is very common in professional communication. Imagine your team is discussing a new project, and you have a concern about the deadline.
You could say, "I'd like to bring up the issue of the deadline."
Or more simply, can I bring up the deadline?
That sounds natural, but there is an important difference between bring up and bring in.
Yes. Bring in often means to introduce someone or something into a situation. For example, a company might bring in a consultant to help a problem.
So you could say, "We need to bring in an expert."
Exactly. Or the manager brought in a new system to improve communication.
Another phrasal verb that appears constantly at work is carry out.
Carry out means to perform or complete a task, plan, instruction, or activity.
For example, the team carried out a customer survey. This means they completed the survey in an organized way. You may hear carry out when people talk about checks, research, plans, or instructions at work. So when you hear this expression, now think about completing it carefully, following a plan.
Now, let's look at some phrasal verbs that are especially useful when we talk about deadlines, progress, and workplace problems.
A very common one is put off. To put something off means to delay doing it until a later time.
For example, I keep putting off this report because I have so many other tasks.
Or, we can't put off the meeting again. The client needs an answer.
This is a useful expression because everyone puts things off sometimes.
Yes, especially difficult tasks. You may think, I'll do it later, and then later becomes tomorrow, and tomorrow becomes next week.
Exactly. Another expression connected to deadlines is run out of.
Run out of means to have no more of something left.
For example, we've run out of time.
Or, we're running out of money for this project.
You can also say we've run out of paper, although hopefully your office printer is not the most important business problem.
That depends on how important the printer is in your office.
True, but run out of time is especially common. If you have only 10 minutes before a meeting ends, you can say, we're running out of time, let's move to the final point.
Another useful expression is catch up.
Catch up means to reach the same level as someone or something, or to complete work that you are behind on.
For example, I was sick last week, so I'm trying to catch up on my work.
You can also say, I need to catch up on my emails.
And if two colleagues have not spoken for a long time, they might say, let's catch up over coffee.
In that situation, it means talking and sharing recent information.
So the exact meaning depends on the context, but the basic idea is reaching the same point or becoming up to date.
Another very useful phrasal verb is keep up with.
To keep up with something means to stay at the same level or stay informed about changes and developments.
For example, it's difficult to keep up with all the changes in technology.
Or, I try to keep up with what is happening in the industry.
You can also say, I have so many emails that I can't keep up with them.
That is a sentence many office workers understand very well.
Definitely. Now let's talk about set up.
Set up has many uses, but at work it often means to arrange or prepare something.
For example, can you set up the meeting for Friday?
Or, I need to set up a video call with a client.
You can also set up equipment. Could you help me set up the projector?
And companies can set up systems, accounts, websites, offices, and many other things.
Another common expression is sign up for.
Sign up for means to register for something.
For example, I signed up for a business English course.
Or, several employees signed up for the training session.
You can use it for courses, workshops, events, newsletters, and online services.
Now let's move to another important workplace situation, when something goes wrong.
One very useful phrasal verb is break down.
Break down can mean that a machine or system stops working.
For example, the company's main server broke down this morning.
Or, the printer has broken down again.
It can also describe a process or discussion that fails.
For example, the negotiations broke down because the two companies could not agree on the price.
That is an important business use. When negotiations break down, the people involved stop making progress toward an agreement.
Another expression is come up with.
Come up with means to think of or produce an idea, plan, answer, or solution.
For example, we need to come up with a better strategy.
Or, can you come up with some ideas for the presentation?
This expression is extremely useful in meetings because people are constantly trying to create ideas and solutions.
You might hear someone say, let's work together and come up with a solution.
That sounds much more natural than saying, let's work together and think a solution.
Exactly. Remember that we say come up with a solution, not come up a solution.
That small word with is important.
Now let's talk about turn down.
Turn down can mean to reject an offer, request, or proposal.
For example, the client turned down our proposal.
Or, she turned down the job offer because the salary was too low.
This is useful when discussing business decisions, job offers, contracts, and proposals.
The opposite is take up in some contexts, but more commonly, when accepting an offer, we can say accept the offer rather than use a phrasal verb.
Right. Not every situation needs a phrasal verb. The goal is to understand and use natural English, not to replace every simple verb with a phrasal verb.
That is an important point for business English learners.
Another useful expression is hand in.
Hand in means to give something officially, especially a document, assignment, report, or application.
For example, I need to hand in the report by Friday.
Or please hand in your expense forms before the end of the month.
In some workplaces, people may also say hand over.
Hand over means to give responsibility, control, or something important to another person.
For example, I'm leaving the company next month, so I need to hand over my responsibilities to Anna.
Or can you hand over the project files to Ryan?
This expression is especially useful when someone changes departments, takes a vacation, leaves a company, or transfers a project.
Another important one is step in.
Step in means to become involved in a situation, usually to help solve a problem or provide assistance.
For example, the manager stepped in when the discussion became difficult.
Or, I had to step in and help the customer because my colleague was busy.
You can also say someone needs to step in before this problem gets worse.
Now, let's put several of these expressions together in a realistic workplace conversation.
Good idea. Imagine that Anna and Ryan are working on an important project with a very tight deadline.
Ryan, how is the project going?
It's going well overall, but we've run into a few problems with the new software.
Run into is another useful phrasal verb. It means to experience a problem or difficulty unexpectedly.
Exactly. So I could say, we ran into a technical problem yesterday.
And what are you doing about it?
We're trying to figure out what caused the problem. We also need to come up with a temporary solution.
Have you spoken to the IT department?
Yes, I followed up with them this morning, and they said they would get back to me later today.
Good. What about the report?
I'm still working on it. I need to go over the numbers one more time before I hand it in.
When do you think you'll finish it?
I should finish it by this afternoon, but I don't want to put it off any longer.
That sounds sensible. We're already running out of time.
I know. I also need to catch up on several emails, but I'll deal with those after I finish the report.
That is a perfect example of how these expressions can make workplace English sound more natural and efficient.
And the good news is that you do not need to memorize them all in one day. Choose a few that are relevant to your work and start using them.
For example, this week you could practice follow up, get back to, work on, go over, and deal with.
Then next week you could add take on, sort out, figure out, come up with, and catch up.
Try making your own sentences about your actual work. If you have a meeting tomorrow, say, I need to prepare for the meeting. Then try, I need to go over the agenda before the meeting.
If you have an unanswered email, say, I need to get back to the client.
If you have a difficult task, say, I need to work on this today.
And if there's a problem, say, I need to figure out what happened, or I need to sort it out.
The more you connect these expressions to real situations, the easier they become to remember.
Exactly. Phrasal verbs become much less difficult when you stop treating them as random combinations of words and start seeing them as useful tools for communicating clearly at work.
Another example would be, the HR department carried out an investigation after receiving several complaints.
Right. You can also say, we need to carry out the plan carefully. It sounds a little more formal than simply saying do the plan, which is why it appears often in professional English.
Now, let's look at work on. This one is simple, but extremely useful. If you work on something, you spend time trying to improve, complete, or develop it.
For example, I'm working on a new presentation for tomorrow's meeting.
Or, our team is working on a solution to the problem.
You can use it for projects, reports, presentations, skills, systems, and many other things.
You might even say, I'm working on my communication skills.
That is especially useful for English learners. You are not saying that your communication skills are bad. You are simply saying that you are spending time improving them.
Exactly. Now, imagine your manager asks, how is the report going?
You could say, I'm still working on it. I should have it ready by this afternoon.
Very natural. Another expression connected to completing work is finish up.
Finish up means to complete something, especially when you are close to the end.
For example, I just need to finish up this report.
Or, let me finish up this email and then I'll join the meeting.
It often gives the feeling that there is only a little work left.
Exactly. If someone says, I'm finishing up the presentation, you understand that most of the presentation is already done.
Another useful phrasal verb is go over.
This one is important because it has several uses, but in a workplace context, go over often means to review something or examine it carefully.
For example, can we go over the report before we send it to the client?
Or, Let's go over the main points of the presentation.
When you go over something, you look at it carefully, usually to understand it, check it, or discuss it.
Imagine that you have an important contract. You might say, I'd like to go over the contract one more time before I sign it.
That sounds very professional. You can also go over numbers, plans, details, instructions, or information.
And there is another useful expression that sounds similar, look over.
Yes, look over also means to examine or review something, often quickly or carefully.
For example, could you look over my presentation before the meeting?
The difference can be small. Go over often suggests reviewing something in detail or discussing it, while look over can simply mean checking something.
So if a colleague sends you a document and asks, could you look it over, they probably want you to check it for mistakes or problems.
Exactly. Now let's move to communication, because workplace communication is full of phrasal verbs.
The most common is get back to.
Get back to someone means to contact or respond to someone later, usually after you have more information.
For example, I don't have the answer right now, but I'll get back to you this afternoon.
That sentence is extremely useful at work.
Yes, instead of saying, I don't know, which can sound a little abrupt, you can say, let me check that and I'll get back to you.
It shows that you are taking responsibility for finding the answer.
You can also say, I'll get back to the client once I have the information.
Another important expression is follow up.
To follow up means to take additional action after an earlier conversation, meeting, email, or event.
For example, I'm following up on our conversation from yesterday.
That is very common in business emails.
You could also say, I'll follow up with the client next week.
Or, can you follow up with the sales team about the order?
So if something happened earlier and you take another action because of it, you can often use follow up.
Exactly. You can follow up on a request, follow up with a person, or follow up after a meeting.
Now, let's imagine a real workplace situation. You had a meeting with a client on Monday. During the meeting, the client asked for some additional information.
On Tuesday, you send an email saying, I'm following up on our meeting yesterday. Please find the information you requested attached.
That sounds professional and natural.
And if the client does not respond, you might follow up again a few days later.
Yes, although you want to be polite and not send 10 emails in one day.
Definitely. Following up is useful, but following up every 15 minutes might make you the least popular person in the office.
That is true. Now, let's talk about find out.
Find out means to discover information or learn something that you did not know before.
For example, I'll find out what time the meeting starts.
Or, can you find out why the delivery is late?
This is another everyday workplace expression. If your manager asks you a question and you do not know the answer, you can say, I'm not sure, but I'll find out.
That is much more useful than simply saying, I don't know.
Exactly. It shows that you are willing to take action.
Another phrasal verb connected to information is figure out.
Figure out means to understand something or find a solution to a problem.
For example, we need to figure out why the system isn't working.
Or, I'm trying to figure out how to solve this problem.
You can use figure out when something is confusing or difficult and you need to think about it.
Imagine your team receives a difficult customer complaint.
You might say, let's figure out what happened and decide what we should do.
Very natural. Another useful expression is deal with.
Deal with means to handle a person, problem, situation, or task.
For example, I'm dealing with a difficult customer at the moment.
Or, we need to deal with this problem before it gets worse.
It can also refer to normal responsibilities. You might say, I have several emails to deal with this morning.
Yes, and sometimes you can say, I'll deal with it, which means you will take responsibility for the situation.
That short sentence can be very useful when someone brings a problem to you.
For example, a colleague might say, there's a problem with the invoice.
And you can answer, okay, I'll deal with it.
It means you will handle the situation yourself.
Now let's look at sort out, another very useful workplace phrasal verb.
Sort out means to solve a problem, organize something, or make a difficult situation clearer.
For example, we need to sort out this payment problem.
Or, don't worry, I'll sort it out.
That sounds confident because you are saying that you will handle the problem and try to find a solution.
You can also say, we need to sort out the schedule before Friday.
So, sort out can involve solving problems, but it can also involve organizing things.
Exactly. If your schedule is confusing, you might say, I need to sort out my schedule for next week.
Now, imagine a busy Monday morning. You arrive at the office, check your emails, see 3 new tasks, discover that a meeting has been moved, and then your manager asks you to take on another project.
That sounds like a normal Monday.
That in situation, you might need to sort out your schedule, figure out which task is most urgent, and get back to several people.
You might also need to go over the new project details before you agree to take it on.
And once you understand everything, you can start working on the most important task.
That is how these phrasal verbs work in real communication. They're not separate vocabulary items that only appear in textbooks. They connect naturally when people talk about what they actually do at work.